is often very easy to love. Thank you for joining us for another episode of DadaNextDoor, the podcast where we showcase amazing raw talent. We go ahead to display the strides that are made when art and activism come together. And we also highlight the incredible, phenomenal women who are behind using their creative expression to challenge the status quo and fuel social change. Today, our guest is the lovely Mijide Kemoli. Makofi.
Thank you.
And with her, we're going to explore activism from the lens of designing for social impact. Mijide is a multidisciplinary artist. She works with a lot of visual elements, illustrations, board games, if you would, be surprised with me. And she's done a lot of other work as an entrepreneur, as a consultant as well. She's going to tell us all about it. But for now, I'll give her the spotlight to introduce herself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Annie. Such a pleasure to be here. As you rightly put it, my name is Mijide Kemoli, and I'm a multidisciplinary creative, as well as a consultant, and I work in different spaces from educational board game development to graphic recording, educational comics, and animated explainer videos. And the main purpose of the work that I do is to aid socially conscious companies, educational institutions, and nonprofits to convey their messages to audiences that need to hear them in a fun and engaging way through art, design, and gaming.
Wow, that is a whole niche, guys. Did you hear that? Art, design, and gaming. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. You've carved an entire niche, and that is amazing.
Thank you.
I am your host, as always, Annie Agesa, and we're going to get right into it. You know where I'm about to start. Where did you study?
Oh, from which level?
Yes.
Like from childhood? Or? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Like all of them.
Yeah.
Where did you study, and most importantly, where did you study art? Like at what point of your studying, your education and growth did you encounter art and decide, this is my baby, I'm dying with her?
So I started off my education in Europe. I was living there with my family. My mom was working for the Kenyan embassy, and we were there for 5 years. So that's where I started school. And that was also around the point that I was exposed to different forms of creativity, especially animation, through animated movies and comics and books for kids. And there was something about it that I felt drawn to.
Yeah.
And I found it mesmerizing that this is not something that you see in everyday life. Figures that look like this, hand-drawn. And I want to know how they do it. And I want to do that. But I was really young at the time. Yeah, I was really young.
Which one was your favorite comic at the time, or animation?
Oh, The Lion King.
Oh,
I love
classic.
to this day. I know it word for word. Like I can recite the entire movie.
Do you still cry at that part?
It hits me here. Yes. Yeah. So that's when my passion was birthed. And in school we had art as a subject, so I got to put it into practice, and my teachers noticed that there was something there that was different. And during the time, because and to this day it's still a big issue, of course, on a global scale, racism was rampant and large scale, and it extended from kindergartens and primary schools to high schools, to offices, to shops. Racism was the unfortunate norm to a great extent. And in my first 2 years of education, I didn't have friends because I was the only Black child in my class. And it's so sad that kids learned and were taught how to hate from that young age. So even lunchtimes, I would find myself sitting on my own. It was sad, like crying over my lunch and such.
Like, is this the Lion King again?
Yeah, and not knowing how to express oneself, because you don't really understand what's going on. You don't understand why other kids don't want to play with
why
you.
is this happening?
Yeah. Why teachers are putting you in trouble for things you haven't done. So art became my outlet. It became my means of expressing myself. And it was a safe space. Of course, home was also a safe space.
Yes.
But in the school environment, it became a way that I could sort of pacify myself in that respect. So when I joined year one, that's when things really started to turn around. I got a teacher who was very kind, very empathetic, and then new students were also coming in who had a broader outlook and worldview. And I found myself beginning to make friends. And then when people discovered I could draw, then they were like, what? And by the time I was leaving, it had become, I was able to build such strong bonds with my classmates, with my teachers. And it showed me the power that art has as well to break down walls and the like. So that's when it started. And then when we came back home, because I was already in a British system school, my parents felt it made sense for me to continue with that educational system.
Yes.
So I continued with art. Art was offered as a subject, so I continued with it throughout primary school, the rest of primary school, on to secondary school, then high school. And finally, it came the point where I needed to decide what I was going to do professionally.
Yeah.
And there were people who were encouraging me, very few people, that you can...
A handful,
yes. That you can build a career in the creative space. But it wasn't something commonplace. It wasn't something you really saw around as compared to professions like law, like engineering, like teaching,
like there
medicine.
are a lot of unknowns that come with the creative industry.
Exactly. So even a careers advisor came to my high school, and in front of my classmates, she told me, when she asked me what I wanted to do, I told her I want to be an animator. And she said, no, it's not a career.
No? Like, no?
Yeah. No, that's not a career.
Oop.
What is that?
Oop.
So I was like, how dare you?
You felt insulted?
Yeah. So people were telling me, why don't you do engineering? Why don't you do architecture? You're smart. Art is not really for clever people. So I was like,
put food on the table.
Exactly. So I decided, okay, let me see how I can strike a balance. And I was also trying to make the decision, okay, do I want to go abroad for studies? Would it be possible to go? Because it's expensive as well. Or would it make sense for me to stay home and see what I can do?
Yeah.
Because most of my classmates were leaving the country. So you feel that pressure.
Yeah, there is pressure.
Yeah. But I felt, okay, I remember there was one careers advisor who was a resident at the school, and she told me, and I'll never forget that statement, that it doesn't really matter where you go, in that you can go to Oxford and fail, but you can also go to Nairobi University and succeed. Like it doesn't really, it's not a final determinant of where your life will end up eventually. So at the time, it was perceived as, okay, maybe I failed because I haven't left Kenya. I haven't gone out. I haven't experienced the world out there. But it ended up being a part of my journey and a very core part of my journey as well. So I ended up going to Nairobi University, and I decided to settle on interior design. That seems to make sense to most people. It's somewhat related to illustration.
Functional.
Yeah. So let me go with that and then see where it goes. So I did the first 2 years, which were more general. And then in third year, you have to specialize. So I decided to go with interior, as was anticipated. And I only lasted 3 weeks. It was not.
How many weeks?
3 weeks. It was not for me.
You were done.
It was not for me. And I still had 2 years to go.
Oh, God.
So yeah, I switched to the illustration, and it was a small class, and I was the only girl in that class. And my lecturer was a lady, and she, like, her work ethic and the kind of work she produced was so inspiring for me. And it showed me, okay, maybe there are possibilities that lie here. But she did tell me the journey ahead would not be an easy one. But, go for it. You shouldn't have to stop yourself. from going after your dream.
We love stories of good teachers who guided you down the right path, and sometimes showing you that it's possible, and giving you the reality of it. That's so much more than anyone else who's told you no. Don't do it.
Absolutely.
Go for it. It will be hard, but go for it.
Absolutely. So I ended up doing illustration. I switched. It was tough. I went through challenging periods on the way. There was a lot of stress and a lot of strain, but I managed to make it to the end. And then I pursued my master's thereafter in the UK. I did a master's in illustration. So I mastered, and I also had 2 female teachers for that, which was amazing as well. In fact, most of my art teachers, except one, have been ladies.
I like the way, because you were saying your classes were mostly like there were a lot of guys and you were one of the few ladies, and then the teachers come out and it's like, yes, we're here. That's amazing to see. So how did you now get into art education and working with the community? And at this point, had you already known that you're going to use your art for to create social impact, or was it something that you're just, I'm just happy to be here doing my thing?
Yes. So I started in art education when I was still a student in campus, when I was in my second year headed to third year. And at the time, I was also doing work in the road safety space. So it was a great time to explore different ways that I could give back to the community through volunteering, because I had university as the safe space at that point in time. So I didn't have to worry about income as such at that point. But I really, really wanted to do something for the community. So in terms of art education, I was working with an organization called M-Tree, which is headquartered in the US, but they opened a branch here as well. And they've been doing a lot of impactful work in Kilifi. We started off in Machakos, though, in a community called Sultan Hamud, an area called Sultan Hamud. And we had been working with kids in the creative space. So there were different arms of the program, from art to fashion, music, tech, live-in community, which was more of seeing how to use community resources and bringing the community together to build essential tools and centers that they needed. Like they were able to put up a school building, able to
What do you mean by using the community's resources?
So whatever resources were readily available there, from the building material itself to the manpower that's there as well, and being able to work collaboratively to advance the community. So there were quite a number of volunteers. Majority of the volunteers came from abroad, but then there were also volunteers that came from here and were mainly students at Nairobi University. So I was able to recruit some of my classmates, bring them together, and we went to these communities, and we were able to interact with the kids there. I taught children myself. In the 6-year period that I was there, I taught about 70 children during that time. And I was still young myself.
You were children.
We were children, and we were still being taught. But with the knowledge that we gained and with the guidance we had on the unique curriculum that was there, we were able to then establish our own form and style of then teaching the kids. And
before we actually get into the details of all that, I wouldn't want to miss out on a nice, strong intro for Kiki Art. Yes, I want you to tell us about that as an entrepreneur, how this is something that where you've created it from, at what point you started it, and your goals with it, and how much further you hoped it will go.
Well, that's great question. Kiki Art is a creative consultancy. And its aim is to aid socially conscious companies, educational institutions, and nonprofits in educating their audiences on a myriad of social issues in a fun and engaging way. And the tools we use to do that are art, design, and gaming. When Kiki Art was registered, I had just come out of university. I had just finished my undergrad and I was about to transition into master's. So I wasn't able to fully immerse myself in that line of work And I was also still doing work in road safety education and art education. So it's only in 2020 when the pandemic hit that I felt like I was just kicked over the edge of a cliff. And I had to try and flap my wings so that I don't crash.
It's time to learn.
Yeah, so at the time I had been working with M3, and then because we were working with schools and working with kids, and schools were shut down during that time, and most of them were in remote areas, we didn't have an option of e-learning. So that meant our work had to come to a halt.
Yeah.
So I asked myself, okay, what am I going to do now? Because this has been my safety net in a sense. And this is what I'm used to. I'm not used to being an entrepreneur. I don't know how to be an entrepreneur.
Being an entrepreneur is not easy.
It's not, especially in this economy. No. But well, we do it.
We do it anyway.
So yeah, that's when I took the leap. And I had already designed 3 games by that point to do with road safety education. So there was the original What Will You Do board game, and then a new revamped version, and then a card version of the game. So a call had been put out by the APHRC, Africa Population and Health Research Center, and they were looking for a board game developer, and specifically a board game developer who had experience in the social space and community work. And my friend forwarded me that job posting, and I was like,
isn't that you?
Isn't this, like, this is me? Yeah, so I applied, and I'm thankful that I was selected. And this is the 3rd year that I've been working with them, and 2 games down already. Yeah. Wow. We designed during that time. And then other clients came along the way. So it's been a journey of growth, which I'm grateful for. And it's my hope that in the coming years, I can continue to advance as a creative in my space and inspire and impact other female creatives who will be coming up to also come in and be able to thrive in their own way in this space. Find
their niche and thrive.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us more about What Will You Do? How is the game played? What does it teach you? You know, what are you meant to learn from it? And how it's been received. You said it's been in testing and everything. So how it's been received and your hopes for it.
Okay. So What Will You Do is a board game that takes players on a journey around Nairobi City as different road users. Yeah. So it's a game that takes up 6 players. It can be up to 6 players, and you can play as a boda rider, matatu driver, saloon car driver, lorry driver, cyclist, and pedestrian. So those are the 6 options you can choose from. And each player has their own unique deck. So no 2 cards are alike, on any of the decks. So as you move along the board, you'll be faced with different challenges that we see on a day-to-day basis on our roads. And you know how our roads are and what people have to deal with, like you. So the unique thing about the game is there's some instances that are beyond your control. There's not much you can do about it. For example, you have a flat tire and you miss a turn because you can't get to your destination without changing it. But then there are other scenarios that are within your control and you have to make a choice. That's the name, What Will You Do? What will you do? So, for example, you've been stopped by a policeman because you don't have a valid license. So are you going to bribe the cop and get away with it? Or get away with it? Or are you going to pay the penalty, even if it sets you back a bit? So it's also a test of integrity, what kind of choices people would make when they're faced with these circumstances, but also now when you see the impact it has on other players, because you're playing with other people in the process as well. So would your decisions be a bit different now that you see how it can affect other people? And then even when you do the wrong thing, there's a risk that you could pay for it later. But is it something that you feel you're still willing to do? And then it opens the floor now for discourse. So people can be able to discuss, all right, this is what we actually face. So what can we do? Do we need to do better? Yes, we do. Okay, how can we do better? So yes, you're right. It's been tested by quite a few people. from Kenya, from outside Kenya, to get different perspectives and understand how the game impacts people from different backgrounds. And eventually it's my hope that it can be also in mass circulation. But I also want to be conscious about how I do it. If there are ways that are methods that are more sustainable, while still maintaining that aspect of bonding, people being able to sit, put their devices away. Because a lot of people ask me, oh, is it going to be a mobile game? No. But I want to have that to build an environment, board game feel. Where people can sit down and put their electronics away and be present in the moment. So that's my hope. And then something that was also really important to me when I designed the game was to reflect the beauty of our culture and our people, and to have Black people as the face of the game. Because there was one young lady who saw it who was from Nigeria, and one comment she made was, I've never seen a game with like Black people at the forefront like that. Like that's different. So being able to push that kind of imagery and visual out.
Sounds like an illustrator's dream.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you.
I'm just curious about how playing Boda Boda Rider usually goes.
Yeah.
I feel like that might be the toughest one.
We can try it out hopefully sometime.
Okay.
Yeah, you can experience
we'll
it.
plan it out. Okay. And you've talked a lot about now, this goes into art education as well. Like so deep into it, especially if we could get it into the Kenyan market somehow. Maybe not mainstream immediately, but just hitting the right places would make such an impact in driver safety education, and you know, there's so many aspects to look at it.
That's true.
And so most of what I've been hearing you highlight has been now the art education with children. A lot of it, even here at the Road Safety Initiative, used to work with children as well. So how easy or difficult is it to see the work that you do reflected on how children behave or how children are growing? Is it, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it easy to see the impact that you're making, or is it more difficult when it comes to working with kids? And how do you measure your impact? So, for example, as you are working in Kilifi with all the kids and all the different tools at your disposal, how did you then measure, you know, this is the impact that we are hoping to create, and this is what we've ended up achieving?
In terms of the kids, I'm grateful that during my time in Kilifi, we were able to impact over 1,000 kids during the period that I was working with M3. And we would normally conduct assessments before we have the session, so when we're just beginning, and then do a post training assessment, so to speak, or post workshop. And through that, we'd be able to gain an understanding of how the different, or how the program impacted the children and how they view themselves, how they view community, and how they view even their own journey. And we aimed to make it a bit more simplified so that it's also easier for them to understand what it is that we're asking of them. But of course, there's also the other moving piece where parents need to be involved also in that process. And they need to give their consent for kids to be involved in something like this. And we also need to exercise sensitivity, because sometimes when the kids are expressing themselves, there are some pretty dark stories that begin to come to the fore. And the kids need to feel that they're in a safe space to be able to explore that without feeling it's something that can be used against them, or them feeling like they're being exploited. And that's something that we also witnessed, like trying to build trust, but genuine trust with the people of the community, so that even as we're sharing their stories, even as we're requesting for people to come and chip in and donor funding and everything, they don't feel like we're simply going there so that we can make money off them. So that's something to also be very sensitive about. But in terms of the material itself, I found it's so much easier to work with kids than to work with adults. Like adults, it's very difficult to change mindsets and to change habits and behaviors that have already been so deeply instilled or deeply formed. So undoing that thread takes time.
Yeah.
But then with kids, it's a lot easier to convey information and tell them this may be the better way to do things, and they'll be more open to exploring that. So yeah, I think even when it comes to our society and community, that's a conversation that I've had with quite a number of people. People asking, how can we change things? Things are not great. They're not ideal with how they are currently.
I really like what you've said about putting your hope in the next generation. I think that's something that separates just the artist from the activist, because you're viewing this from a lens of social revolution. It's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen if we rush it right now and teach the people who've known their habits for so many years. We start teaching them new habits. No, we have to. There's this story about how a cathedral was being built, and it took so many years. It took over 100 years, and the reason it was so fulfilling for the people of the community was that it wasn't just built for the people who needed to have a cathedral then. It was built for them. It was built to give them work. It was built to give them a purpose. And by the time it was actually over, this is something that's so important to that community right now.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way in more than just the art education. I feel like it also goes into the way you design.
Our messaging and in terms of the values we align with have to be in sync. And in terms of what I do and in terms of my professional work, integrity is a very big part of it. And being conscious also of the kind of messaging that we're putting out. So that's why I'm very particular about working with nonprofits, with socially conscious companies, and with educational institutions, because the kind of material that I create from a design perspective, I want to ensure that it's material that will help people and something that people can learn from, something that people can be able to share with others and help them grow in whatever space that may be. So in that journey, I've been able to work with clients in different spaces, from agriculture to health financing, to policy, youth leadership, mental health. So the list goes on.
Wow.
I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And so I do my best to help them put out that message in the strongest way that they can, and also being inclusive in the content itself, so that people who are interacting with it can be able to see themselves too. So people of different skin tones, people of different sizes, PWDs, and so on and so forth. So making sure people see themselves and understand that they are part of that journey as well, because it's very easy to find yourself falling into a bias also in the kind of work that we put out. And it may not be something conscious, but one looks at their work and you're like, oh, I only draw one kind
one
of
type of people.
one type of person, or one
if you don't relate to the art, then you're not gonna love it all that much. It will just be something that you saw that you're now moving on from, which is why today we talked about people taking care of the things that they love. And art is easy to love, especially if it goes to relate with you right at the core.
So true.
So with that, can you highlight for us one project that's been really meaningful to you personally? And let us know why it was so meaningful. And it doesn't have to be one. You can't choose from your children, we understand.
So there are two that come to mind because, like you said, I have so many children, so many projects I've worked on. But then there are two that come to mind. The first is a comic that I designed on cyber hygiene for an organization called KickTernet. And why that particular comic is so meaningful to me is when I shared it, because there was a day when we got together, they recruited different creatives to learn their skills in different capacities. And the main character was a character that I birthed in the process of creating that comic. And there was something about how she appeared. It was just vivid in my mind as soon as I saw the content that needed to be relayed. And when I drew her and brought her to life, she was the first of a character that I designed that had that kind of look. Like she's dark-skinned and plus size with a big afro and very stylish and big glasses. And she had her own aura, even as a cartoon character, like beautiful aura. And it spoke. When it was projected on the screen, that was the first thing people connected with. And they said, I've never seen a character like that. Like, you don't see characters like those very often. And that was very deep for me. And I still feel there's more I need to do with her specifically, like maybe her having her own series or something, but that would be
that would be really cool.
Somewhere down the line we can explore that.
I actually feel the energy when you're talking about her. It feels like something that's very important to you.
Oh, thank you. Jeez. Yes.
That was the first one.
And then the second is a graphic recording that I did, or more of a visual summary that I did for the Museum of Black Colonialism. Oh, that project was powerful for me.
Really?
So the team from there had done a research on colonial detention centers and how those histories, that dark history, connects with the prison systems of today. So they were making that connection, that link, and they went to some of these detention centers in different parts of the country, and they had, I think it was a 19-page report that they shared, and then an 8-minute video. And at first when I saw them, like as soon as I received them, I felt, oh, when am I going to have the time to read this? But when I started, it was so engrossing to read all these things that I wasn't aware of. Even though I'm a Kenyan, I didn't know this
Like
about the
what?
history.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, just understanding what was happening in some of those detention centers, how they were like set for different kinds of people. Like there were some for youth, some for women, some for... So just seeing those connections and what used to happen, like the Hola massacre and such. And the history of the people, the prominent people that have also been in those detention centers, like Dedan Kimathi, even Raila Odinga, and visualizing that. That was one of the most powerful things. Taking all that content and then picking out key parts of it and creating one large image of all this information. And each part of the image, every component played a role, and it all married together, from the color schemes to the appearance of the people that are represented there. And I drew the Kenyan map with the Kenyan flag at the center, and then jail bars within it, and then a kind of roots branching from there to show the roots of this and connecting with the prison systems. So it comes together to form chained hands at the bottom. Yeah, and then everything else surrounds it, and I can see you like
I'm
visualizing it as well. And then the colors too, there were a lot of like army greens and earthy tones, browns and such. It's just such a nice piece. Like I'm proud of it as the creator of the work, and I'm glad that it also had impact. It was exhibited in London. They printed it out and they exhibited it. So that was really meaningful for me. Yeah.
Wow, I can tell that sounds significant and intense. Like you had to process all this information and then create this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as you've been creating all these things, I can imagine it's not always easy. It's not just a smooth ride. Not everything falls into place. I mean, even the lecturer from the University of Nairobi foreshadowed and said, it's not going to be easy, but go for it and do it. So what are some of the not easy parts that you encounter whenever you're designing or trying to work with some clients? What are some of the harder parts?
First, I'm very grateful for the journey thus far. Despite the hurdles that come with it, I wouldn't see myself doing anything else. So I'm very grateful for the journey. But yeah, as you said, there are challenges. I get very tired sometimes because you're expending a lot of creative energy.
Yes.
You have to do a lot of thinking. Sometimes if there's a tight deadline or clients that have been scheduled back to back, like this year was a huge learning point for me that from next year, God willing, I need to be pacing my project so that at least I have breaks in between, so that my mind can reset and then I move on to the next one. Like there was one instance where I had 3 conferences where I was graphic recording back to back. So I had a 3-day conference this week on education.
Oh God.
Then the following week I had a 4-day conference on agriculture. Then the next week I had another 5-day conference on another aspect of agriculture and use cases and everything. Very technical. So you're thinking the entire time, people are speaking, they're sharing, and you have to be alert throughout so that you know what information you need to pick. Yeah. And then you're thinking of how to visualize this on site. Yeah. So that gets very tiring.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when a client has feedback and the feedback is very extensive or the feedback is delayed, then it also sets back the process. And there are times when I felt it's hit at my confidence a bit, but now I'm learning not to take it so personally. Also, this year was the first time I dealt with a disappointed client. And it hit hard, but then I think it was also a part of the learning process. And I learned to take it in stride and try to find a balance that, yes, the client is right, but then sometimes the client is not always entirely right. But it's okay.
It's okay.
But I can take my lesson, I can learn and keep moving forward and see how to do better as I move forward. So
I like that. Take my lesson. It's like
you
take the L.
Take the L,
is a lesson now.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, those I would say are the biggest challenges, especially getting tired. Like sometimes I get really tired.
Creative block or anything like that?
I haven't of late, which is interesting because it's been all systems go for almost the entire year.
Yeah.
I've had project after project after project. I would travel and I'm still working and such. But at this point, I feel like, my creative flow is slowing down a bit, and probably it's signs that I need to take a break. And it's great that the holiday season is around the corner, so I can just go to a spa or something
and just be treated well.
If somebody wants to give me a spa treatment, it's fine.
We leave her M-Pesa number in the bio.
Please.
So as we head off to a short break, I want to know how you kind of overcome some of these challenges. Just as you said, now you need a spa day. Of course, you need to take your time, relax, and you're planning on spacing some of the things out. But when it's something like those back-to-back conferences, and you still had to do them, and you still had to be creative and productive and listening and active, and so how do you overcome these challenges? And even as clients can be really, really specific, and they get displeased. a little bit easier than you'd expect.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you create that mental toughness that you said you've taken it in stride? Yeah, how would you say you create that mental toughness and help yourself overcome these other challenges?
Yeah. So first, in terms of preserving myself, I take naps. Like when I can get a nap in.
Preach. We call them all power naps.
Yes. So when I can take a nap or just shut down for a bit, like now once I've done one day of the conference, when I go home, I just go and rest and disconnect for some time. And then depending on the urgency of delivery of the project, I can be able to resume after I've taken that break. Because there are times when I've worked continuously. There was one project I worked on from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day. Continuously, like without sleep. And I had already been up for most of the day. So I was exhausted and I needed to travel that following day out of the country. So I had a meeting before leaving.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was really exhausted. But when I can, I try to get rest. And then in terms of client feedback, like I had mentioned before, at first it hit at my confidence. I felt like, is it because I'm not good at what I do or what I did specifically for that event? Was I not paying attention? But then it showed me maybe our visions were not aligned at that time. So how moving forward can I be better aligned to my client's vision? Maybe we need to have certain meetings beforehand so that I can get a deeper understanding of what specifically they want me to pick out and what they want to be key in the message that's being conveyed. Then I also lean a lot on my support system and my peers also that are also in the space. When I have challenging moments, I can call up some of my friends who are also doing work of a similar nature and ask them, how do you deal with this? And that gives me some encouragement as well. And it's a very supportive community, by the way. I'm very grateful for that. It's funny, as young people, we're able to be there for one another. Like now, if I can't take on a job, I can refer someone else to do it without feeling
like I missed out.
That's my opportunity. No. They shouldn't get. No. So we're able to share with each other in that way and build each other up as we also grow individually. So that's been really, really helpful in my journey.
That's lovely. Community plays a really big role in literally all the work that you do. So and it's now time for a short break. You can check out Mijide's work. We've linked some of them in the description below. And you'll see some of them just right now. Stick around and join us for the next part. Welcome back to the next segment of our podcast. We continue our conversation on design for social impacts with Mijide, and we want to know the potential for the future. You know, what future you see for this specific space. Is it promising? Are there opportunities that young designers could actually be looking into? And especially as someone who carved an entire section and niche for herself, it's I'm sure your opinion would be really impactful. Where do you think it's going, and what opportunities could you have identified that you think younger designers could take advantage of?
Something very encouraging that I've observed, especially in the nonprofit space, is a lot of organizations are changing the ways in which they disseminate information or broadening the ways in which they do so. Because in the past, the traditional way of doing it was to write a report, sometimes 50 pages, 100 pages with a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics, a lot of jargon, that technical jargon that laymen or women or people would not be able to quite understand. But now they're understanding the importance of incorporating visuals for people who are more attuned to visual learning, or people who may not have the time to be able to read through all that content. How can we be able to take the key ideas and convey them to audiences? So there's a lot of opportunity there, and using different approaches from animation to graphic recording for meetings, using gaming to create safe spaces for people to talk about sensitive topics, comics. So there's ways that designers can be able to adapt and be able to insert their expertise in aiding. I'm sure it goes beyond nonprofits now, and just aiding organizations, corporations to disseminate information in ways that can relate to audiences better. And the great thing about visual communication is there are ways that you can do it that eliminate bias. Like now, people who may not be able to read, who may be illiterate, people who may not understand certain languages can be able to understand visual language. Like now, when you go to a mall, for example, you can look at a small icon or image and know, okay, the bathrooms are that way. So there's something about visual learning that's more universal and can bring in wider groups to the conversation as well.
Yeah, it makes much more broader strokes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And do you think when you're designing or creating from matters or like things that are really close to your heart, does that make you biased, or does that make you passionate?
Well, of course, there's a leaning towards going for projects that come more naturally to you. But at the same time, engaging in topic areas that are beyond that are able to increase your scope and your understanding also of other issues and other perspectives as well. And in fact, when we look at our world today, that's something that I would say is an issue that does plague societies and communities, especially in the online space, where people are like push a single narrative and feel if you're not aligned with this narrative, then you're an enemy or you're against this.
You're against it.
But that then closes the floor for having discourse on certain matters. Of course, it may not apply to every area. There's some things that are wrong and they're wrong. But we should also not close the floor to hearing different perspectives and seeing how can I then be able to visualize this or see how to put this down in a format that can then be understood by others. So yes, there's the element of passion when you want to lean towards something that comes more naturally to you, but we have to be careful, and that's where it becomes important to be able to also catch ourselves when we're being biased. And most times it's the audience that will be able to bring that to the fore, because as a designer you'll have your way of thinking and your client will also have their way of thinking, but the people who will determine its success or failure in the end will be the ones that are meant to use that material, the end user. Yeah, so you have to listen to them and hear, okay, when you've interacted with this, how has it impacted you? If it hasn't, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and see what to do.
And that's a really important way of checking the impact that you're creating against your goals. Check with the end user, see if it's actually affecting them, see if it's what they really wanted to hear or know. Wow. So I want us to wrap this up, unfortunately, really soon. Unfortunately. But I want to know what you're currently working on through Kiki Art. Any future projects we should look out for? Plug yourself as well. Anything we'd like our listeners to go and check out, things that you think are cool are also admissible.
Yes.
Go for it. Plug yourself.
Oh, thank you. This has been an amazing conversation, by the way. Thank you so much for having me. And right now, at the moment, I'm working on the game development project still with the APHRC. And it's been really exciting. It's been a huge opportunity for learning and growth as well for me. And it's been amazing to see an organization tap into something so new, to be able to convey information about what it is that they're researching on, and for it to have impact on people. So that's been exciting. Also working with a few organizations on animated explainer videos for their content, as well as graphic recording for meetings here and there. So I'm pretty busy at the present time, but I still intend to take a holiday. And I hope in the coming year I can be able to have an exhibition. That's something that's been asked about for a long time. People asking when I'm going to have an art exhibition and have people come in and see the work. So that's something that I'm working out and conceptualizing as well. And I'd encourage people to check out the website. That's www.kikiart.com, to see our work, to see what I do. And if they have any ideas for collaboration, they're more than welcome to drop a message on the platform. I'll receive it and I'll get back to you. So I'm not super active on social media, but definitely if you send me a message on the website, I will see it. So
we believe you. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. We've learned so much from you. We've learned that we could always think outside the box. We could always try something new. You could still be told no and or yes with disclaimers, and you go for it and actually make your own way. And I think one thing I've learned is that art plus children. Yes,
that's the way.
As we look to make social change that will last and be generational, we need to go back to the ones who will carry it forward, right? Not that we should ignore ourselves and people around us, but if we can impart the right things on the kids, I think we're doing something right. So
true that.
In the wise words of Mijide, true that. Thank you once again for joining us at home. Check out all the links that we'll leave in the descriptions. We'll leave her website. We'll leave any other visual work that she's done that you can check out. And subscribe, like, share, comment. We'd love to interact with you. And let us know which one of Mijide's images you end up liking. Check out her illustrations and you describe the one you like the most.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
We will see you next time, and say bye. Bye.
Thank you.